Hi class. In this video, I'm going to cover publishing your web page on GitHub and talk a bit about web publishing in general. So we're going to be using GitHub as our publishing service, and we're going to be using the GitHub desktop as an application that's going to allow us to publish. So many of you may have seen this and used this application before. If not, that's no big deal. We're going to go over all the basics in this video, and if you have any questions, we can always cover more things in class or in one-on-one meetings. To get started, let's talk about what we're working on. So what we want to do is publish our class project. So you see I have my ClassPortfolio folder that I created in the first HTML video. And what we want to do right now, this project is on my computer, and if I view it through Sublime Server, I can see it on my computer, but I haven't published it on the internet. So if I wanted to send it to somebody who is reviewing my portfolio or to somebody who I want to see my work, I can't just send them a link to this folder because it's just on my computer. So ultimately what I want to do is use GitHub desktop publishing in order to publish the folder. So I'm going to open up the folder just so we can see what we have. So I'm just going to drag my folder over to Sublime Text. And we're not going to write any code in this video, so I'm just going to go to Tools and start Sublime Server. And I'll actually just minimize this for now. So if I go to Chrome, I'll go to localhost 8080, and I'll click on my portfolio site. And so we can see our class portfolio. Ultimately, what we want to do is have a copy of this folder with our website on the internet. And so you can see the beginning of this URL is localhost. So that's just a local file on the computer. Ultimately, what we want is a URL that's on the web so that it can be viewed by other people. So let's talk about how that works for just a minute. So basically, we have our local copy of our project. So this is our local project over here. And we're going to get an app. Okay, so I'm going to draw that down here. This is the GitHub app. Okay, and then the GitHub app is going to be connected to our GitHub account in the cloud. So here's our cloud up here. Okay, this is GitHub, the website. Okay, so we're going to make a version of our project, and we're going to put that in through the GitHub app, and we're going to say, upload this to the cloud. So the GitHub app is going to take a snapshot of that project, and it's going to upload it to the cloud. So there'll be a copy available on the cloud, which is really just a bunch of different servers in different places that are connected across the internet. And what that's going to allow us to do is if we have somebody else, let's say we have another user over here, just draw a little laptop, and they have their browser open. Okay, so let's say this is Chrome. So if you send your website to somebody, they're going to type in the address or paste in the address. So they're going to use HTTP or HTTPS for a hypertext transfer. And they're going to end up with the URL that we create. So mine is going to be something like onbmcc.github.io and slash something. So that URL is like an address, except it's an address for a place in the cloud, which is up here. So it's going to go up here, and it's going to say, please give me the website that's available at this location. And then that GitHub is going to send it back. Okay, so this way we can make our website available to anybody who has access to the internet on any device. GitHub also manages versions of our website. So let's say you had your own computer. So let's say this is my desktop, and then, I was going out and working at a lab. This isn't going to be, unless you're commuting back and forth from school, this isn't going to be an issue. But if you were working on another computer, you could go to this computer, and as long as you have access to this GitHub, you can actually download the project and make changes and then upload it back to the GitHub cloud. And those changes will go back to the GitHub app and ultimately back to our local project. So besides publishing our website, GitHub also makes the website available for us as developers to work on any computer that's also connected to the internet. So it provides multiple different types of functionality for us. So with that out of the way, let's actually set up our GitHub app. So you are going to need to download it. There's a link on the class page, and I'll also include a link in the video description. The easiest way to get there is just to Google GitHub Desktop, if you spell it correctly. Actually, it might not matter if you don't spell it correctly. And so you can see the GitHub Desktop is the first result in Google. So I'm just going to click on there. And then it's auto-detecting that I have a Mac computer. If you're on Windows, it should say download for Windows. If it doesn't, you can click download for Windows here. So I'm going to click download for Mac. Okay, so now that that download is done, it actually opened up the downloads folder for me. But if that doesn't happen, you can just go to the Finder and open a new Finder window and go to your downloads folder. And you should see it there. It's already unzipped for me, which is nice, but you could just double click the zip drive to unzip it. And then you want to make sure not to just immediately open the app, because if you clear your downloads folder later and forget about it, then it'll disappear. What we want to do is put the app in our applications folder. I've already downloaded it before, so I'm just going to click replace here. You shouldn't see that unless you've downloaded it before. And then I'm just going to go ahead and delete the zip drive. At this point, I can go over to applications and just scroll down to, well, went too far. There's GitHub Desktop. Obviously, it'll also be available if I go over to the Spotlight and just type in GitHub Desktop and hit enter. I can open it from there as well. So I'm going to double click on the GitHub Desktop right here. And if you're on the Mac, you're going to get this message asking if you want to make sure that you want to open it, just as a security measure. So I'm going to click open. And so we're going to get to the GitHub Desktop app. If you already have an account, which many of you may have if you've taken other MMP courses, you can just go ahead and click sign in to github.com. If you don't have an account, click on create your free account. It'll open a window for you. You just have to fill in the username, email, and password. You may have to, click on an email or something like that. But you should be able to create the account pretty easily. Once you create the account, click sign into github.com. That is going to open up a page here. If you're already signed in, like if you've previously signed in on Chrome, it might do it automatically for you. But right now it's waiting for me to sign in. So I'm going to sign into my account. And then it's going to ask me if I want to go back to GitHub Desktop, and I'm going to say okay. And so now it's going to fill in my credentials. And so you can just double check these real quick, make sure those look correct, and then just hit continue. If you want to give them statistics, you can. If you don't, that's fine. Just going to leave that. And so now we're ready to create our first project. So I'm going to get rid of this window and get rid of this. So our project that we want to publish is on our desktop. And what we want to do is click the create a new repository. Okay, so once you have some repositories in your GitHub profile, you can clone them using this button. But for now, we haven't created this repository yet, so I'm just going to click create a new repository. And this is the part where it gets a little tricky. So I have to make sure that my repository matches my folder. So the name of my repository is ClassPortfolio. And I'm going to choose the desktop. So the path is only going to go up to the point of desktop. The name ClassPortfolio is going to be the project folder. So everything else should be good. I'm going to click create repository. And one thing that GitHub does is it makes a commit of our changes automatically. So if I go over to the history, you can see that it's actually added some of the files that were in my folder here. So you can see there's the about.html, there's the index.html. You can leave this the way it is. I'm going to click the undo button down here just so I can go over how to make a commit. So I'm going to click undo. So what you will see, and when you make changes later, you'll see this again, is that you have some different files. And some of them are special files that you don't see on the desktop because they have a little dot in front of them. These dstore and the git attributes. And then some of them are the files that you created for your project, about.html, index.html, portrait.jpg, style.css, and a thumbnail. So those are all of the different files that I created while I was building my website. And what we want to do is add those into our sort of snapshot or our recording of the website so that we can put that online. One thing that I'm going to do real quick is, if you might not see this, especially if you're on Windows, you might see something else, but the Mac computer makes these little .dstore files that help make the computer more searchable. And I don't really want to put that online because it's not really necessary for my website. So there's an easy way that I can get rid of that. I'm going to go to, let's close that real quick. I'm going to go to the repository and go to repository settings. And then there's a tab for ignored files. Anything that I type in here that matches a file in any of my folders is going to be ignored. So if I type dot and then ds_store and then click save, now that dstore file goes away. So I don't have to worry about saving that anymore. If you do end up saving it, it's not the end of the world. It's not going to break your website, but it looks a little bit cleaner if you get rid of those files. If you don't see that file on the Mac, it may not have been created yet. You can still go ahead and add that dstore to your ignore. So once I'm happy with what I've got here, it's got my index page and my CSS page and everything else I need to publish my page. I'm just going to add a summary of what I'm committing. So usually with the first commit, you can just describe, you can say initial commit. So initial just means the first one. And you can also add a description, but that's not necessary. You do have to have some comment for the commit. And then I can click the blue button, commit to master. So I'm basically just saying, I want this website, this version of the website, to be added to my GitHub account. So I'm going to click commit to master. And now it brings up this new menu where I can click publish repository. So I haven't actually published this repository online yet. There's a couple other nice things in here, like I can open in Visual Studio Code, which is what it's kind of guessing is my text editor. You can also change this. So I tend to use Sublime Text. So I'll go to preferences and let's see, under integrations, I can set my external editor to Sublime Text. And save that. So now if I click open in Sublime Text, it'll open up my project directly to that folder, which is very convenient. I can also click show in Finder, which the Finder window is already open, but if it wasn't, when I click show in Finder, it's going to open that page for me. So that's also a very convenient thing about the app. So I'm going to click publish repository. I'm ready to publish my website. I don't need to keep my code private. The description is not necessary, but it can be helpful. So I can say this is an example portfolio site. And then I'm going to click publish repository. And make sure to uncheck the keep the code private, because then you won't be able to actually publish the code for other people to see. So once it's published, I can click view on GitHub. And that's going to bring up my repository. I'm already signed in on GitHub because I had to sign in earlier. But if you weren't signed in on GitHub, you would still be able to see the code. And so that's actually nice because you can send people your code, even if they're not signed into your account, they'll still be able to see it. So I can go to index.html and I can see what that code looks like. And there's a lot of other things I can do here. I can actually edit my code. I can do a bunch of other stuff. The main thing that we want to do while we're here is actually publish our website. So to do that, you do have to be signed in. So if you happen to be signed out for some reason, when we click, let's sign out and then go to view on GitHub. If you're signed out, you'll still see the code here, but you're not going to be able to make any changes. So what you want to do is click sign in and make sure that you're signed in. And so the last step to publish our code, you just go over to the settings tab here, and we're going to scroll down a bit until we get to the GitHub Pages tab right here. So GitHub Pages is a service that will publish your website for free. And so we're going to use that service this semester to create a website that we can share. It's going to make it easy for us to see each other's work, and it's going to make it easy for you to turn in your work for me to grade and give feedback. So the only thing we have to do under GitHub Pages is we have to choose a source. So under the source, we're just going to choose the master branch. That's the only branch we have. If you want to add other branches, that is possible, but it's probably not going to be necessary in the class. So I'm going to click master. And the root folder, you can just leave that. Basically, that means if you wanted to create a different folder for the publishing site, so you could have some of your site that's not published, you would change that, but we're going to leave this the same. And then I'm going to click save. So you're not going to see anything immediately. It just says GitHub Pages source saved. But when you scroll back down, you should see a URL. And when you click on that, it's not published yet. So it takes about a minute before it publishes. But eventually your site will publish at the location that you see right here. One thing to note is that if I click on this link, it's just going to replace the GitHub link. So if I want to keep my GitHub page open, I can either drag this link up here to create a new tab, or I can hold Command on the Mac, or probably Control on Windows, and then click to open it in a new page. So I'm going to wait a second for that site to publish. Okay, so this is taking longer than usual. One thing that you can try if it's not loading very quickly is you can go to the URL and add Index.html at the end. Sometimes it takes a while for GitHub to index everything, but if you help it out a bit by adding that in there, you should see your website load. So now you have a URL here which you can share on the internet. You'll submit those as your assignments, and you could send it to anybody who might want to look at your website. And it should work exactly the same as it does on your local machine. And so now your website is published, and so you should be good to go. So now that we've got the site published, there's just a couple of things I want to go over. If you don't have any issues, you may not need to do this, but if you're planning on updating your site in the future, or if you have other problems in the future, I'm going to cover a couple things that you can do in terms of troubleshooting. So as far as updating the site, I just want to make a very quick update so you'll see what that looks like. So I'm going to go back to the GitHub app, and I'll just close this. So I'm going to open up my project in my text editor, Sublime Text, and I'm just going to make a simple change just so that I can show what this looks like. So I'm going to increase the size a bit here, and let's just make like a really quick small change. So I'll go to my About page, and I'll add another paragraph here, and I'll just say, I am a professor at BMCC. Just adding a sentence to my bio section. So when I go back to the GitHub desktop app, what we'll see is that it actually saw that change. You can see this little green line. And so one of the nice things about GitHub is instead of completely rewriting your files every time you make a change, it actually looks at what are the differences between this page and another. And it will really account for any simple difference. So for example, if I decide to take out this line right here, and then I go back to the GitHub, now you can see a red area and a minus where that line was removed. And so once I make those changes and I'm ready to update my website, I just have to make a new message here and then click the commit button again. So I'm going to write a message. I'm just going to say updates about page and click commit to master. And then I'm going to push to the origin. And so that's how I publish the site again. Again, this takes about a minute or so to actually update on the website. But eventually, if I go to the view in GitHub and I open up my page, I can also just go directly here and I go to the About page. If I do a refresh, then I'll see that's the updated site. So I can make updates. Another thing that may happen, this may not happen unless you're using multiple computers, like in the computer lab or something like that. But if you make changes to your site, you can also download them. So if you make changes somewhere else, you can download those changes. So I'm going to make a change in the GitHub app, just as an example. So let's say I'm going to just, maybe I'm like on the run and I have to make a quick edit. So I'm just going to go and edit my Index.html. And I'll just add a little comment here. I'll just say, this is an example of a GitHub update. Okay, so I just added a comment there. It's not going to affect my code. It's just for this example. So I'm just going to say GitHub example, and I'm going to click commit changes. So I can actually use the desktop, or I can use the web app to make changes as well. So I can also use the GitHub web app to make some changes to my site. It's obviously better to use a text editor on your computer because you have a lot more functionality there. But in a pinch, I can actually just edit the code directly from the website. And if I do that, one thing that you'll notice is when I go back to the GitHub app, there's now a button up here that says Fetch Origin. So since I've made some changes up here, if I click the Fetch button, you're going to see there's a new change here, and there's a new button. Instead of push, it says pull. So besides pushing new content to the site, I can also pull changes from other places onto my own computer. So I'm going to click pull origin. And now if we go to the Index.html page, you can see the comment that I just wrote on the web app. One of the reasons that GitHub does this is because it's used for collaboration with other developers. We probably won't get into too much of that this semester, but it makes it so that you and another person or many people can all be working on the same set of files in the same code base and making changes at the same time. And GitHub will keep track of those changes and help you put the changes together so that you can collaborate on a website. So another thing that you may run into is if you accidentally move your folder or you delete your folder by accident. Because our project is in the cloud, that's not a big problem. So I'm just going to close these out, and I'm just going to delete my folder. And so, this is the same thing as if like by accident you deleted the folder or you moved it somewhere else on the computer. So if I just delete this folder, when I go to the GitHub app, you're going to see this, can't find ClassPortfolio. So there's a couple of things that we can do here. You can locate it. If you move the folder, you could try to locate the folder on your computer. But if you deleted the folder, you can just click clone again, and it'll make a new copy of the folder based on what's on the website. So it's really easy if you lose your folder or if some other issue happens to just add the folder back here. So that covers the basics of using the GitHub desktop app to publish your website. We'll be using this throughout the semester, and so you'll see it in some videos that I'm using, and I'll do updates. But if you have any questions, please reach out to me, and we can cover any issues that you might be running into on your own computer or with your own setup.